Welcome to the video. In it, we'll discuss the daily and weekly price action for CleanSpark, where I'm going to add, when I'm going to trim. We'll take a look at Bitcoin and Solana as well. I'm super interested in those for year end. We'll take a look at the short and long dated options interest on this one, and we'll check out some CleanSpark news. But really, all you need to know is I'm super bullish on this one into year end, and you can also check out my eToro portfolio in the description down below. Morning. CleanSpark. I guess everyone wants to talk about Bitcoin and crypto related stocks this week, so let's just hop straight into it. So we had this key level, this red line around $13. Market makers were hovering around that one as well to keep it under, and you can see we really struggled for a few days, about a week actually, probably more than a week, to get past that, and then we did finally have a breakdown here. It is popping in pre-market, so that's looking good, and mostly treasuries look like they're on fire today. So again, treasuries taking the limelight from miners. Obviously, right back at the beginning of the cycle, I didn't think treasuries were going to be this insane. So that's something to bear in mind. And you probably want to lower your take profits on miners because of that. The liquidity will be going there. However, I still think this is cheap. So price-wise here, we're at the bottom of this volume shelf here. So it makes sense to bounce here. A breakdown of kind of that $12 area will see us get more to the 1077. I'm not really planning on adding or trimming anything in any chop round here. I'm just gonna hold it into the cycle end, and I've got my take profits much higher. If it doesn't pan out, I'm still green on it, and I made a lot of money on it last year, so can't really be too mad. It's just not been as fruitful as a lot of people were thinking about it, but it's still been pretty good. It's still outperformed, the SPY, essentially. So price to the upside then, if we can break above that red line, really, we should have quite a volcanic move. We saw it here. Previously, we broke above it with nice volume, and we had a great big move, 30%. Would love to see that happen again. Don't know if it's going to happen. We do have quite high short interest, so we could get a pop, or it could just kind of fizzle. But I would expect the latter. We should at least get to this 1420 before we hesitate if it's not going to be a violent move. But you can't plan these things. However, above that, 1613 and 1880, they are completions of prior measured moves. I don't have any doubt that they will complete at some point during this cycle. So that would be my bear case kind of targets. And if we pull this down, sorry, I've got a little bit of allergies today. I love being allergic to pollen. So I've kind of marked on here at this red $20 line, trim some at this level to reduce size. eToro does not like me holding CleanSpark. It really makes my risk score higher than it should be, just because the stock goes whoop. Unfortunately, can't do anything about that because I'm still quite highly convinced this is going to be a fruitful play for me. Looking above that though, this green Fibonacci level, this is my primary take profit and kind of my base case for this. I'll need to trim some out here, but primarily focusing on this kind of 23 area. Now, I previously was super bullish on this one, kind of getting up to $50 and stuff. But like I say, the treasury play is where all the hype and the narrative is right now. And I don't see that changing until we roll over for the cycle. But that doesn't mean that CleanSpark and all the other miners, Mara, can't have a good run into the end as well, when, there's just going to be a rising tide lifts all boats, right? And that's true in every bubble. Indicators, I think I talked about everything on the chart there. Having a bit of a brain trump. RSI did have time to cool off, which I actually love, and we didn't drop the price too much whilst it was cooling that off, which is really important. I didn't want to see it fade all the way back to the bull market support band, because that'd just be annoying. MACDX Plus, institutional flow looks good there, and banker flow also. We didn't see too much outflow while we were pulling back, which was great to see. Moving on to the weekly. I wish it would just resize normally. Again, just looks like a big old cup and handle. Not the prettiest, so I wouldn't expect that one to fill. But I think I just spotted actually a better kind of trend line here. That's pretty good. How have I missed that one? I really do need to try to tidy up some of my charts and get rid of some of the old measured moves. The problem is I actually quite like remembering the old measured move because I can see that it does like to fill its pattern. Sorry, my boss is in the corner barking at me, telling me to hurry up. So that would be gorgeous if we broke out of there again. I would expect some volume coming in there because algorithms and momentum traders will be on that one, especially Wall Street. Lily Knight. RSI here also had a little bit of a cool off, so that's good. MACDX Plus looks like it's switching bullish, which I like a lot, and Flow looks really good on the weekly. So again, CleanSpark could be time to shine for CleanSpark. Let's hope so. Open options interest on this one. So we did notice this last week. The level we talked about on the chart where the market makers were currently sitting at $13 did move up to $20. We can check that from moving the support band to historical. And we did see that they were there, holding it there for a little bit. What does this mean? This means market makers have no intention to suppress price of this asset until it gets to $20, at which point they will do their very best to keep it below that level. So the fact that the spread there is so high, really like that. That's one less thing to worry about creating downside pressure on this one. For this week, volume, we have some pretty nice chonky chonk here. Looks pretty bullish. I did want to check earnings is out though, isn't it, soon? So when is that? The 12th of August. So 12th of August would put it here. So earnings, let's have a look. What the market's thinking. So strikes ending earnings week. Not particularly interesting, a little bit bullish, but not overly so. We could see a little bit of a pop, but nothing that I would bet my horse on, so to speak. Earnings, though, I think is going to be interesting. I would expect them to EPS to be about $1 or something like that, like insanely higher than its guidance here, which was 0.21 cents, which is, should be a massive beat. But I don't think the market will react super bullishly to that. I don't think there's going to be any, crazy woo. Previously on earnings, we've seen kind of the same reaction. It's either been a massive beat or a massive miss, and it's just kind of done nothing. So with miners, price doesn't typically tend to move too much around earnings. It tends to be more about what they say, what their commentary is, what they talk about with their upscaling, with their acquisitions. That's the kind of stuff that moves these assets. Aside from that, they do track the IWM. So when the market goes super risk on, these should do very well. So really, we need the IWM to pop, pop, pop. And I think that's going to happen when we get rate cuts. I don't think that's going to happen in this coming meeting, which I think is this week. I think it's this week. I think it's going to be a pause again, so that's a bit boring. But we should see things start to move up after that with the expectation that rate cuts will come in the meeting after. But again, that's going to depend on what Jerome Powell says, if he is dovish or hawkish. So is he going to be saying, we're thinking more about cuts, or is he going to be like, the data says we need to wait more, blah, 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 which I don't really think is accurate because the tariff data that he is depending on isn't actually a real thing. He's just been holding off on the expectation that something will happen with tariffs, not the actual data from tariffs, as opposed to when he cut, when Biden was in, when all the numbers were way worse. So you tell me, is Jerome Powell politically biased or not? It would seem so. It would all seem a bluff. However, I got distracted. Let's go back to the open options interest and push it out to November. I mean, where did all the bears go for kind of the period where we're expecting the bull cycle to be? It looks like they all fell off a cliff. So $20, that massive, massive volume there is probably what's keeping the market makers a bit higher. So thank you for opening those options. However, I wouldn't normally push options out further than that because the cycle never traditionally lasts into the following year. That could change this year. That could be different. Institutions might want to keep the price just grinding higher. We don't know. We don't know enough. This cycle could be very different to other ones. It could be more of the same, just have a smaller pullback. We will only know when we get there. but I will be taking plenty of risk off the table. I certainly will be out of my proxy trades, which will act as leveraged positions, which means I do not want to get caught in the downside on this one. So I'll take my money and run. But if we look January 2026, we can see this, I think, is a little bit crazy. If you were going to be staying in crypto related assets past the traditional peak, I would probably say don't be in CleanSpark, don't be in Mara, don't be in Iron, don't be in Robinhood, because if there is downside, these ones will feel it the most, and these options will turn to dust the fastest. Probably, if you want to stay in the cycle a little bit longer, stick with the OGs. So Bitcoin, Solana, Ethereum, maybe some good alts, but these leveraged trades, that's brave. That's too rich for my blood, as they say. And for March, they do come down a little bit. I'm just curious. So it looks like we're expecting the bear cycle to kick in here. I personally would put the bear bottom at kind of $10 to $7 as well, at which point I will start buying again and repeat this cycle. Although it might be a little bit different because I might look more at treasuries for the next cycle rather than miners. That is a problem on eToro though, because they don't list a lot of these treasuries. So for the sake of transparency, I do own a lot of treasury positions, just not on eToro. So I have my exposure elsewhere because they're not listed on eToro, unfortunately. Hopefully that changes next cycle though. So I definitely don't want to be bag holding those bad boys either. I think they're even more risky. So news-wise for CleanSpark, the company's been pretty hush-hush lately, so not too much there. I've left up there the institutional ownership there, the green bar chart. So, institutions still loving this one. They're just hiding it under the hood. And the short interest there has come down quite a bit, but, still not great. And we do have lagging data on that, so I won't know the current data. And in the top right, I put on the IWM tracking with CleanSpark. So, they really do mirror each other. They're really risk on assets. So we need to see risk on. Some people will say we're super risk on now, but I would argue we're only risk on for some altcoins. And then that's probably because the Ethereum's taking dominance from Bitcoin. So I wouldn't technically say we're super risk on there. And there's still a lot of companies out there that haven't made new highs. There's some valuations starting to get stretched, but I wouldn't say we're really in a super risk on environment that we do require for CleanSpark and that to boom higher. Rates coming down will be super good for that one though. On the left here, Bitcoin mining stock guy. Don't post a lot of his content. Don't use a lot of it because a lot of it's just clickbaity, I guess. But his numbers here do actually kind of align with where I was sitting. So his bearish case here, 645 for the bottom to 8. When we looked at the open options interest, we did point out that a lot of the support to the downside was sitting at $7. So, I'm aligning with that right now for that to be the bottom where I would like to stop rebuying some of the stock. Probably wouldn't have it as a core position again next time though, just because of, again, treasury companies probably going to be my focus next time. For the base case, he's sitting at 24 to 35. I think my base case is 25 to kind of 35. So we're very close on that actually. And you can go and check back historically. That's been the same kind of area I've been talking about on my charts for a very long time. Bullish 40 to 50. That's where I was sitting before treasuries. So again, I might keep some till that level, but probably take a lot off in that base case scenario because I always tell people I don't want to time the bottom and the top. I just want to get the meat of a move. And that normally revolves around getting a ridiculous valuation and kind of taking my position off a base case, not waiting for super hype numbers, which brings us on to his euphoria numbers of 64.70. Now, at the start of the cycle, I would have said that was almost guaranteed to hit those numbers. But again, the liquidity, there might not be enough cash out there to get everything pumping. So we'll see. But I'm probably not going to have anything in it if that is the case, so I'll be missing out on that tippy top, but I'm okay with that. He just put on here as well his Bitcoin target 180 to 230, and that's pretty close really. So I also think the bear case for this is going to be kind of between 70 and 90, so our numbers actually line up really well. I don't know if that's because we're using the same data sources, but who knows, stranger things have happened. His peak is a little bit, my base case for Bitcoin's kind of 150, 160, where I'll take off a lot of my riskier proxy trades. regardless if they're at take profits or not, because the underlying asset does drive my positioning for those. But I do see Bitcoin easily getting to around 200k and then possibly higher if real euphoria kicks in. We haven't seen any euphoria yet. It is like a ghost town out there outside of kind of eToro. Twitter's really not that booming of it. Sorry, I should say X. But it's quite hush hush around there, and a lot of stuff really isn't moving that violently. I mean, given the amount of buying that we've seen, I think something like 20 years worth of issuance has been bought up in the last few months, and Bitcoin's done next to nada. So we've not seen it yet. There's definitely some aspect of price suppression going on, but that can only last so long. When this supply crunch comes, it's going to get wild, and then typically what happens is retail come in, they come in late, they come in hyped, and then they get left holding the bag all the way back down to this 100 to 70k. I do still expect a bear cycle for this, but I really don't know. That 70, kind of 90 would be where I would expect it if the cycle was doing its normal thing. If the cycle is different, though, we won't know until we see how it reacts in the euphoria stage. So we'll have to wait and see. So looking at the Bitcoin chart, I'm going to have to make this real quick though, because I think this video is getting on a bit now. I've waffled quite a lot today, a lot to talk about. Price just kind of really chopping around. We're building out a nice volume shelf here though. I think by the end of this period, we'll be back on track with my predictive move, which is interesting. So nothing too alarming. Price is kind of doing exactly what I thought it would. It's not having a boom time at the minute. Don't think that's going to come. I do think we'll have no problem getting to this kind of 150 area. We've got a bunch of confluence there. Is that going to be the cycle top though? I don't know. We don't know. Stranger things have happened. Obviously, timeline for that I've kind of marked out as September. But I think if we get there before September, then we will go higher. But if we're pushing it in September, maybe not. We just have to wait and see. Downside support, again, we have really wicked off lovely from this orange support line, but technical analysis is fake. It doesn't work. Beg to differ, but okay. If we do break below that orange line, then we've got this really nice volume shelf at 105 with great support from the bull market band, which is curving up. I don't expect to see any wick action down there unless it's like a 1 day wick or something, like some kind of swan event, which in these markets with this macro, it could happen. So I would not rule it off from that perspective, but it would be highly unlikely and honestly a great buy the dip opportunity, because even to 150, that's a 45% return in something that's fairly low risk. RSI cooled off a little bit, but we're looking, stick a line on there, a little bit of bearish divergence. So again, we want to see that breaky break. Otherwise, we're going lower. So if we can pop above, let me put another little line here so it's easier to see. Really, we want to see a little break over there with some amount of effort. I must have already drawn that level on because we've got this little measured move here and to 125. Love to see that kind of happen, but it's possible we just chop around along here until kind of the beginning of August, which would make sense with some of the seasonality we're seeing out there. MACDX Plus, institutions still loving it, and flow kind of holding steady, not really having outflows, but just chopping around. Quick look at the weekly though. I know I'm aware of how much I'm chatting today. Maybe I'm just in a chatty mood. Easier to see this head and shoulders. I do love head and shoulders move. In my experience, it normally completes every time I've seen it. I don't think I've ever seen a head and shoulders or an inverted head and shoulders not complete. So something to bear in mind. I do use that pattern a lot. And cup and handles as well tend to be very, very strong indicators. Bull flags I do use sometimes, but they don't always complete. Not always. These ones tend to be the OGs. Measured move for that does get us to 137. So I think it looks good. The RSI indicator here, pushing up high a little bit. Might need to see that cool off a little bit before we have the final stage, but we can see Bitcoin has no problem getting to 90. So if we get towards the year end and we start hitting RSI 90, that's probably your signal to start trimming your positions, because the RSI is getting very extended. It can go higher. Obviously back there we've got kind of 96, and that was a peak. So getting up into the peak of the cycle, when you start getting these pops, they're good indicators that it's done, especially when you start coming back down. So that's something to bear in mind as well. You don't need to have all the most complicated indicators and I don't know, weird voodoo stuff to know when to de-risk. The RSI is pretty damn good at telling you when to, ease off the gas a little bit. You don't have to take everything out, but chances are a lot of people will be looking at that indicator and thinking, oh, it's getting a bit much actually. The relative strength index is pretty good at showing you that. Right, I think this video is pushing about 20 minutes, so I'm going to talk through Solana super fast. Still, I think this is going to be one of the higher returning positions. I know the limelight is on Ethereum right now, but Solana is really underpriced. The staked portion of this is insanely high, which means the liquid tokens available to trade is much smaller than Ethereum. So when we do get rolling on this one, we'll see a big pop, I think. Ethereum, I'm not going to talk too much on it, but I am bullish on it, just not as bullish as I am on Solana. And I do hold a lot of Ethereum treasuries, which I'm more bullish on than Ethereum. So I think Ethereum as a tech is outdated. I think it's just a narrative play. I mean, Tom Lee is able to pump this bad boy up. It's going to go, go, go. I didn't know Tom Lee was going to be in on it at the beginning, so the narrative aspect wasn't there. But again, I think Solana is the better tech. It's much faster, it's much cheaper. It should be what institutions start working with more than Ethereum. And maybe we see that in the down market. So price here, to the upside, we've got some nice measured move, confluence here at 251. I don't think this has any problems making new highs here. Really, I want to be seeing price get up here to kind of $500. Will it get there? I'm pretty confident it will, because the price is insane. It's very mispriced, I think, in my opinion. I don't want to take profits until I get to 500. Well, I didn't. That was my original plan, but I'm probably going to trim a little bit lower because my position has got so much bigger. Because even though I trimmed small here, I added quite a lot in this area, and then again quite a lot here. So I made my position much bigger because the price was just ridiculous. If we'd have stayed up here, I probably wouldn't have added as much. But the good news is, when you add a lot here, your average price is here, I've only got to get to kind of 320 to double my money. Love that. So I will need to take some position off, because if nothing else changes in my portfolio, that will be around 20% of my portfolio weighting, which I don't like that risk. No, it's not for me. So that's something to bear in mind. That's a wrap. If you enjoyed this content, feel free to share it with your mum, your nan, your dad, your dog, whoever. I'll see you next time.